Thanks so much for staying with Morning Live. Now, the ANC says it has noted the resignation of Dr. Mavuso Msimang, who is, of course, was the Veterans League Deputy President, and he terminated his membership of the ANC after 60 years of devoting his life to the movement. Now, in a statement that was issued by the organization, the ANC has, however, cautioned its leaders and members against public spats and what it termed the decampaigning of the ANC. But it said that members should work through the structures of the party. In his letter of resignation, Dr. Mavuso Msimang bemoans the endemic corruption, which is said is to be a cause of great shame for the organization, and it has become part of the ANC's DNA with devastating consequences for vulnerable members of society. South African Communist Party General Secretary Mapaila joins us here in studio, and while former unionist, author and columnist and also political commentator Dr. Ebrahim Harvey joins us virtually for a discussion on this latest development. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time and welcome to Morning Live. Let me start with you, Dr. Harvey, in terms of your reaction, your response to this resignation by Dr. Mavuso Msimang.
Yes, thanks, Akina. It's actually my topic for my column, News 24, next week. No, it was long coming. I'm not surprised at all. You got to follow his, at least for the past decade, articles in City Press, in numerous papers, where he's been addressing and raising rather strongly and sharply the question of corruption. You know, unfortunately, it doesn't go too much into a critique of the neoliberal policies of the ANC. Although if you look at SABC's interview with him yesterday, he speaks about pit toilets, he speaks about what's happening in the townships, the terrible situation with service delivery, etc., which then moves into this area of explicit critique of neoliberal policies of the ANC. But remember that the gist of his letter doesn't draw so much an attention to a critique of neoliberalism in the ANC, but to this endemic corruption and, in fact, a high tolerance level of corruption in the ANC. Unfortunately, you know what he does? He speaks about the Zondo Commission of Inquiry, but he doesn't really go into Mapaila. Now, let me tell you, Mapaila is in many respects even worse than Nkandla. So, but it's very significant. I'm not very surprised, however. And I think that analysts will play down, who say he's, 82 years old, etc. They misunderstanding this very serious context within which this resignation has occurred 6-7 months before the elections. And I'm almost certain that it is bound to have a negative impact on the ANC. But I'm not surprised. He's been calling these shots bravely for over a decade now.
Mr. Mapaila, your assessment of this resignation?
Firstly, let me greet Dr. Harvey. And it's a painful moment for the movement to lose one of its stalwart, a literally detachment member. That's a special unit in the liberation struggle that has given its all for the liberation of our people, a selfless generation. But at the same time, I sometimes put myself in his shoes on the issues that he has raised. But fundamentally, a leader of his level, I had a discussion with him last week, just to indicate a point. And he did intimate to me that something big, he was going to make a big announcement. And we agreed to find some more time for some discussions. But I think he has been despondent for quite some time, like even a bigger portion of membership of the organization that has not been quite happy. But essentially, what we are not happy about, beyond just about organizational internal problems, is the state of South African state and the state of South African economy. And I think that's why I agree with Dr. Harvey that it doesn't go deeper into it. Because if you go deeper into it, you'll find the real cause of the many things that he's talking about, that he's lamenting about. Take, for instance, let's say, corruption on the side, apart from the issues that he's raising. Fundamental, all the other issues are issues of the crisis of social reproduction of the capitalist system that has intensified, increased, and consolidated under a democratic dispensation. And you remember that capitalism doesn't serve the people, it serves the interest of business. And if you look at the areas of his complaint, one of the things that I think I hope you'll also agree to have a lengthy interview with our team. Myself, I want to participate in that so that we can deeply go beyond what about the internal matters of the ANC. The commitment to fight against corruption, for instance. The president, this current president, although I have myself indicated even in public that one of the key questions facing the movement today, which he raises, is the question of renewal of the movement. And I've at one point said that this president himself cannot lead the renewal project after being tainted by the Mapaila scandal. But at the same time, it requires perhaps a much more younger generation, perhaps not this one, that can kick off a radical renewal of the ANC itself, or the entire movement, including that of the Communist Party. So the issues that he is raising fundamentally are not internal questions of the ANC, are in questions of society about the direction South Africa needs to take, because capital has made more money or more profit out of this country during the period of democracy when the people are suffering. And we have had a state that continues to go in with capital, what one may call, for instance, a couple of things, a continued incumbency of a cohort of people in a public administration, in political leadership, who serve their only interest and their only being, and the organization has been turned to serve that cohort as well. At the same time, we have got what we normally call compradorial class, the class that has captured the state, served on only its interest and the interests of colonial masters. For instance, we have not developed our own new economy responding to the conditions of our people in the township, in rural areas. We have simply taken the framework of the apartheid system and tried to serve the entire society, and it has not been working. That's why I think is missing the point. But certainly, it's a painful moment to see a cadre of that quality leaving the organization.
So taking the nuances that you've just highlighted into cognizance, one has to ask, and I've asked you personally this question on many occasions, and Dr. Harvey, I'll take your view on this as well. Dr. Msimang was uncomfortable to the point, ultimately, where he decided to sever ties with the African National Congress. And given what you've just highlighted to us about your disconcert with the ANC and the direction that they have taken and where this has left South African society, broadly speaking, why haven't you felt, as the SACP, sufficiently uncomfortable to serve divorce papers, given how you've been treated over the years?
We've been sufficiently uncomfortable. We express these questions all the time. The issue in our case, for instance, look at the agility of capital today in the context of South African politics. Capital has realized that the ANC cannot guarantee its profitability going forward. And therefore, capital has decided to replace the ANC, irrespective of using all of these other problems, whether it's corruption scandals, poor service delivery, and so forth and so forth. But majority of these services related to the capital's policies that they've imposed on the state. And therefore, because the ANC, according to what they see, and the pressure that society is having on the ANC to improve what we call service delivery in our case, capital feels that they need a party that will guarantee them profitability. So they also heighten this thing that the ANC must grow, irrespective even of the major achievements that has been made.
You as the SACP are in alliance with that party.
The point I'm raising is that when we are to make a particular decision ourselves, we take that into account. For instance, do you want to destroy the ANC in order to hand over South Africa to a new group of capital group that they have now assembled, whether it's the so-called Moonshot or Charter for South Africa,
but by
whatever.
your own admission, capital has never had it better in this country than they have under the ANC.
Yes, of course, but they will have it more, 10 times better under a regime that will now continue to guarantee them this. The reason there has been also part of internal problem, even in our own party, of this notion of incumbency, that is incumbency in the state, incumbency in government across the board. You must remember that our members are members of the ANC in their own right. The dual membership system is the only one in the world. So when you deal with this matter, you are looking at the possibility of a movement breaking right in the middle.
But so, Mr. Mapaila, we don't have much time. I don't understand how you can separate yourself as the SACP from whatever is happening with the ANC, because you are part of the alliance. So therefore, collective responsibility accrues to you as part of that alliance. But I want to bring in Mr. Harvey here, just in terms of what Mr. Mapaila is saying, and I want your take on it, because, you know, when we talk about the endemic corruption, you look at what happened with the Zondo Commission, which are things that Mavuso Msimang mentions. This has happened under your watch as well, Mr. Mapaila, as part of the alliance.
But we said something, Sakina. Don't just say it and leave it like that.
But you
not only said something, we campaigned about it.
But is it enough?
It's not enough to the extent that we can leave. But it's enough that we've remained conscious about it and raised this question and done something about it.
Do you take accountability?
Not completely.
Okay. Mr. Harvey?
Yes, thanks, Sakina. No, Sakina, for over 2 decades, when I was a columnist for the Mail and Guardian in 1999, I was drawing attention to, I called both COSATU and the SSCP suckers for punishment, disregarding how the ANC has treated them, in particular COSATU, a little bit less SACP. I mean, I can tell you now, you are absolutely correct. I marvel at the accuracy of your question to him. And this is questions that the SACP and his former predecessor, Blaise Mande, ducked and dived all the time. In fact, Nzimande even went out of his way to stop. There was a groundswell of feeling within the ranks of the SACP to go it alone in election. They were tired of being treated like that by the ANC. And Nzimande, you know, and other people stopped this. I had thought really when Solly came on board, you know, and replaced Nzimande, I thought we were going to see a fresh new turn, you know, to really getting the ANC to be accountable, and if it doesn't occur, to go on their own. I think the SCCP really rallying with COSATU behind it would make a formidable impact, and if there's anything that will scare the ANC like hell and cause it to do lots of things and shift policies, I can tell you, is the realization of that threat. And it has just been a threat, really. I'm very sorry, but Solly's attempts to explain away is a little bit pathetic. I'm sorry to use that term. I've heard it so many times for over 20 years. You hear it from COSATU and the SACP, and look where we are today. Their own membership are worse off than ever. The broad working class, black working class, is suffering today. Conditions in the townships, Sakina, was far better, the African black townships, under apartheid than it is today. Everything is falling apart. Children are dying in pit latrines, sewage running down the roads, children playing alongside those, sewage. Now, I mean, Solly knows this, the SACP knows this, COSATU knows this, and still they continue to give support, which they're going to do in 6-7 months' time too. Now, this is the very serious problem and a contradiction, really. I think this country might have been in a different space now. Had the SACP gone on its own and rallied behind them, the COSATU support, we might have had, I think, fundamentally a different situation, and certainly where social justice would have prevailed, where you have the complete absence of it. I mean, Sakina, the levels of impoverishment, poverty, and social inequalities is worse today than it was under apartheid. So what has the SACP and COSATU's presence in that alliance did if it was meant to serve the interests and needs of the working class majority?
I'll tell you what,
massive.
With Dr. Harvey, Mr. Mapaila, we are out of time, but Mr. Mapaila did ask, like at the onset, that we have a longer discussion, so we'll indulge you in that. We'll bring you back.
I'm going to his house now to have
Go and have that discussion. But thank you so much, Dr. Ebrahim Harvey, former unionist, author, political commentator, and SABC General Secretary Solly Mapaila, on the resignation of Dr. Mavuso Msimang, who until this week was an ANC senior member, a stalwart of the party, and a leader of the Veterans League. So let us know your thoughts on that as well.